Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Njist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Njist.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. Today, I have a very special guest joining me, but I know I say that all the time, but it's true, right? I have very special and amazing guests joining me lately, or, ever since I started this. So I'm very blessed, but I have Troy Hadeed joining me all the way from Trinidad. But what I like to do, Troy, is have you introduce yourself, like who you are, what it is you do, and then you and I are going to rock and roll.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thanks, Max. And before I jump into my intro, what I like to do is, even though I'm on your show, I like to let listeners know, being on so much podcasts, I've begun to realize how much work it actually takes to have a podcast and have a show. And I just want to take a moment to let listeners know, and I want to say thank you for what you do, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Pleasure's all mine, my friend.
Yeah. Now, who is Troy Hadeed? Well, I try not to lock myself into too much labels. If I say I'm a yoga teacher, well, then what am I when I'm not teaching yoga? If I say I'm an author, well, who am I when I'm not writing, right? So I try not to lock myself into a box. I am from Trinidad. I've lived in Trinidad my whole life. I've traveled quite a bit. If I have to answer your question, who is Troy? I believe that everything I step into in my life, I would like to believe inspires us all to be better human beings, reminds us what it means to love one another, and connects us all deeper into our relationship, to our understanding of God, whatever that is. And whether I'm teaching yoga, which I've been doing for 20 years, or writing books, or speaking, or on podcasts, or just being an ordinary guy in a coffee shop among friends, I would like to believe that is what I do, or try to do at least.
I love it, right?
Yeah.
Because I think, like you said, whatever that is to you, but I call it God, right? He or she or it put us on this earth, right? Like you said it perfectly, to love one another, right? To be helpful to each other, right? And with the craziness happening in the world today, we need more of that. We need more guys like Troy coming on the podcast, right? And we're going to get into a story, everybody, but like I knew this was going to be an awesome conversation, right? We haven't even started yet, but we had a little pre-talk before the show, and Troy has some amazing energy, and I had to thank him for being here. So what I like to do, Troy, though, is you go back as far or as deep as you want, but talk about what I like to talk about in the beginning is like where you come from. What are those challenges that have shaped who you are as a human being, right? And how you got through that, and how now that you help people through yoga and your books and speaking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow. Where do I start? Well, let me start. I like to grab stuff by horns, right? So I'm gonna start by saying that the greatest influence on my life is my privilege. And I say that because I come from a comfortable home, not like overly well off, but a comfortable home, financially comfortable home. But my greatest privilege is knowing what love and security is, from my family, from my friends, from my social circles. And of course, there are all the bigger labels of privilege, right? Be it skin color, gender, race, all that stuff. And all of that is real.
Right.
But I think what we don't often talk enough about is the privilege of knowing what love is, what it means to be loved, what it means to be safe, what it means to feel secure, even though my opinions and my choices in life were very much out of a box and not considered normal. I was always accepted and always felt supported. And I think that is my greatest privilege of all, that has shaped me, not only as a young child, but throughout my life.
Right.
My biggest influences growing up, I remember aspiring to be the next Pele, the one of the greatest football soccer players that ever walked the planet.
Right.
At 14 years old, I realized that that probably was not going to happen. Um, but I was also greatly influenced. I grew up in a Catholic home, but being in Trinidad and growing up in Trinidad and having two older brothers, I'm 7 years the youngest, I was greatly influenced by two things as a young child. One was Christ, Jesus Christ. And I say that as different from the church because from a young age, I identified that a lot of the things that I would be taught in church,
Right.
Christ wouldn't do that. And Christ wouldn't say that. So I began to cultivate my own relationship to Christ outside of what I would call the establishment. And my relationship to Christ has greatly influenced and shaped my life, along with the influence of reggae music and Rastafarian culture from a really young age. And I idolized Bob Marley, but whereas most people would say, well, I idolized Bob Marley and then that got me into reggae music and started smoking herb. For me, it was very much different. It was completely different. I connected to Bob and reggae music and Rastafarian culture in a much different way. It was much more of a spiritual dynamic. And because of that, and because I understood that herb was a sacrament, and I saw it socially being used in so many other dynamics, leisurely or to whatever get high, I made a stand from a really young age not to smoke herb, you know?
Okay.
Not that I'm against it in any way. It was just a conscious decision I made.
Right. Well, because I think growing up, right, well, most of us associate right the Rastafarian lifestyle with Bob Marley, right? At least
Yeah,
that's what the media showed, right? Was reggae
yeah,
music and them smoking lots of herb, right? Like, but people didn't understand, I think, that it was part of their belief system, right? Like you said, their sacrament, right?
yeah,
Not everybody that believes in that lifestyle smokes herb that I have found out. Not
yeah,
everybody does, right? It's more
yeah,
they believe in it for more of the spiritual essence that it creates and the connection, like you said, because if you think about it, right, like at least what I've been learning as I've grown up, right, and gotten sober
yeah,
and expand my spirituality is like Jesus Christ didn't have a church. He didn't go to a church. He didn't sit with the elders and
yeah,
right. He went to where the people were. He met them where they were
yeah.
at, whether
He
that
was a he was actually very much anti-hierarchy, anti-establishment.
right. And he
Yeah,
was, well, as you know, like, the Bible and stuff and the writings always talk about where he sat with the poorest of the poor. He
yeah,
sat with the prostitutes, the tax collectors, right? Those
yeah,
were his people because he was trying to get them, right, to see that one, the error of their ways and that there's a better life.
yeah.
And like you said, he was anti, that's why they hated him so much, I think, is because
Yeah, he was when people think of Christ, they think of love and peace. And he was a revolutionary dude. He was a rebel like
right.
no other rebel.
Right. And I,
You know?
I I have to preface this, everybody, right? Where this is not, we're not trying to promote any type of religion or we're just having a conversation, right?
Yeah,
But I think Troy is, at least from what I'm learning lately, right? As I dig deeper, is like he was a revolutionary. You told him he had
yeah,
to do it a certain way, and he was like, "No, that's not the way God taught me how to do it. That's not how
yeah,
the Father says
yeah,
this is the way the Father says we get closer to Him." And it's right, like you and I, never knowing each other, say we break bread together. That's kind of like what
Yeah,
that whole gathering together and to love each other, right? To get to know.
of course. What you do to least of your brothers and sisters, you do unto me.
Exactly, right?
You know, where did that go? Where did that go?
Right.
You know? Yeah, and one of the things I love to do, Max, is, and again, I know this is not a religious podcast, and I'm not really about religion, so, but I understand that a lot of people, when they hear word God, or they hear word Jesus or Christ, there's almost like an internal twitch,
Yes.
immediate resistance, and I get it. I completely understand. But you know, the very first chapter of my book is actually called Redefining God. And it pretty much offers the perspective that how dare we allow history or the misalignments done in the name of God or even in the name of this teacher called Christ? How dare we allow that to rob each one of us of a relationship with the divine?
Right.
Like church or establishment or mosque or religion does not own God. Like God predated religion,
Right.
right? Much like Christ predated the church.
Right.
So whether your beef or your resistance be with the establishment of their presentation of God or their presentation of Christ, whether you believe he's the son of God or a teacher or a prophet, like don't let that rob you of a relationship to God or even to Christ, you know?
Right. And I agree with you, right? Because I believe my opinion, humble opinion is my spirituality, however that looks to you, right? Don't let
Yeah.
anybody tell you that it's wrong, right? Unless you're hurting somebody, of course, that there's nothing spiritual about hurting another person. But
Yeah.
if you are trying to go closer, let's say, to your higher power, whatever that looks like, that's what they want. That's what I believe God
Yeah.
or Jesus Christ wants, right? Us to have that
Yeah.
faith that there is a power greater than ourselves, directing everything around us and helping us grow as human beings, right? Because I hate to say it, right? And like I said, this is not a religious or a political podcast, but some of the things I see with the hate going on in the world just
Yeah.
it's sad. It almost makes me want to cry sometimes that people have come to a point where they may not know you, but they hate you because you have a certain belief system. Or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, but you don't even
Yeah.
know me, right? I could be the
Yeah.
friendliest guy you ever met. Like, come into my home, I'll feed you. But oh, I can't because you believe this or you voted this way, and I can't do that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I've
Yeah.
got to put this podcast together. I bring so many different people from different backgrounds together to show this is what the world's about is one another having these open and honest and at times vulnerable conversations so that we could get to know each other and make this world a better place. One person at
Yeah.
a time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Max, it's what I call the identity crisis. And I think the entire planet is in an identity crisis. And
Absolutely.
you know, in the last few months before publishing my book, the name of the book changed. And it changed to the name of the book is My Name is Love. And one of the reasons for that is the only way we can understand what it means to love is when we get our head out our ass. When we get when we
Love
get over,
it. That's
yeah,
the
when
truth
we
right there.
get over who we
Right.
think we are. Because get this, if I identify as white, well, it makes me and you different. If I identify as Christian or Catholic and you identify as Islamic, well, it makes us separate or different. If I identify as Arab and you identify as a Jew, well, then we're separate and we're different, whether it be whatever it is. We
Right.
have all these layers of our identity that separate us and divide us and make us different.
Right.
And as long as we connect with that identity, I explain it like this, right? All our layers of identity are anchored to our physical form, meaning my name is Troy, this is my body.
Right.
In my opinion, that's the first lie I've been told, right? So all the layers of my identity are now anchored to my body.
Right.
My body and my ego, if you want to call it, it only knows one thing for certain, that is death.
Right.
So therefore, my unconscious programming is self-preservation. So what I'm getting at is when I identify with all of these things, I perceive anything outside of that as a threat
Right.
to my identity.
Well, don't you believe that it's like the powers that be have started that, right? So they can separate and divide us, right? Because I'm with you,
Yeah.
right? 'Cause I look at you and I go, hey, there's my brother Troy, right? I don't say,
Yeah.
oh, that's Troy over there from Trinidad and he's different from me, right? It's like, no, that's my brother from another mother, as they say, right? And
Yeah.
trying to bring good into the world. And that's, unfortunately, there are people out there that want us to be divided. I'm sure there's people
Yeah.
that don't even want us to have this conversation to bring to the world, like that we should
Yeah.
all be one and, one people, you know?
Yeah. You know what, Max? I sometimes have a hard time thinking. Let me put it this way. I would like to plead someone's ignorance rather than plead their innate evilness or craving for destruction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think we are all just products of our conditioning.
Right.
And we're conditioned in certain ways. So that person believes that to be true. Let's take for instance, let's go to Hitler. Hitler thought what he was doing was right and true.
Right.
Right? I'm
And
not
his mind,
defending it or saying it's right in any way whatsoever. It was absolute evil.
absolutely.
But due to his conditioning, he believed it was right.
Right.
You know, and it's so important that we acknowledge the power of conditioning, because I do not believe that anyone is innately evil or bad. I think there's a seed of God within every individual, you know.
Absolutely. I believe the same
Yeah.
thing. I believe that we're inherently good, right? And then it's
Yeah.
the conditioning that changes us,
Yeah.
right? Because, like you, right? I come from a fairly good background, like no poverty, right? Single mother, yes, but surrounded by love, right? With family. But yet I still fell into addiction because I made choices, right? Does that make
Yeah.
my conditioning from my mom, who never touched a drug or out, in her life? I heard
Yeah.
my dad did, but he passed away when I was young. So I never saw him drink or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like you and I are
Well,
on the same mission, right? We're here to bring some happiness,
yeah.
some love to the world, and have this conversation where some people would be like totally against it. But I'm glad you're here, right? Because
Yeah.
I get the benefit of learning from your wisdom and what has shaped you as a human being, right? So if you want, like, let's talk about your book. Like, what led you to write
Yeah.
your book? Because you said as you're growing up, it sounds like you had a great upbringing, right? Mom and dad, yes, raised you Catholic, but it also sounds like they let you make choices for yourself, which is
Yeah, you know what I think it was, Max? I think I joke about it all the time. But I came 7 years after my middle brother. I'm the last.
okay.
And my mom had me when she was 40. And I think I was pretty much an accident or a last attempt at a girl, because I have two brothers.
Right.
And I think they were just like, dude, that one, just let him do whatever he wants. So I think I got an element of freedom that my two older brothers did not get, you know? And I think that also, that element of freedom, of course, allowed me to make my own choices and stand my ground and decide what I believed in and what life I wanted for myself, you know?
And that's
Yeah.
hard, right, for parents. But I get it. My mom had me at 38 and had my brother at 40. So I get that, right? Sometimes I think
Yeah.
that was when my brother was born. She was like, that's it. I'm done. Let him do what he's going to do, right? Yeah. Me and you can have a
Yeah.
conversation about that for hours, right? But
Yeah.
so as you're getting older, right, and learning and as you say, finding your way in this world, right? What were some of those things that you went through that led you to your book? And give the audience the name of your book so that they understand.
Yeah. Well, let me first, I guess what led me to my book was, when I went to university at 21, I remember telling my dad, I was like, Pops, you don't got to send me to university because I'm not coming back to work in a family business. So I understand.
Right.
He's like, nah, I'm sending you to university. I went to school in Florida, in Tampa.
Okay.
And I said, all right, great. Well, I'm gonna study writing and philosophy. And he was like, no, you are not. His language was a little bit more. He was like, you are absolutely not. And so I studied business, but it's so funny that pretty much 20 years after graduating, I write a book on philosophy, I guess, life and philosophy and so on. But I think what had a major impact on my life was my journey in and through yoga practice. And that really shaped my life in a profound way. And, people ask me all the time, well, how did you find yoga? And I always say that yoga found me. And I think it's a really beautiful story. And I'll tell it backwards. But right before COVID, I remember I was teaching in Slovakia and at a yoga festival. And I was asked that question, how did you find yoga? And I tell this story of this teacher when I was in secondary school. I don't know what grade that would be in the US, but I was 14 years old.
Oh, that's like 8th grade here in the
Eighth
States.
grade, sure. And it was a boys' school. And I remember going up every lunchtime to sit with this teacher, Mr. Gayadeen, and he would give me all these books to read, all these philosophical, religious, Eastern culture, Eastern tradition books. And I would give up my lunchtime to go and read more books and more books and more books. And I'm telling them this story in Slovakia. And I remember saying the words, I really hope I can meet him one day so I could tell him how he possibly influenced my life at 14 years old. And I come back to Trinidad, and about 2 weeks later, I get this message in my inbox. And it says, I think I gave you the practice of brahmacharya, which is an Indian philosophy, to read in 1994. Fatima College, signed S. Gayadeen. So, of course, my jaw drops. I'm like, what the fuck? So I replied to him, and I'm like, Mr. Gayadeen, give me your number. And I called him, and I was like, first of all, he says, please call me Sylvan, because you're not 14 years old anymore. Right. And he then says, let me get your story straight for you. He says, you were sent to detention.
Oh yeah, we missed that part, right?
Yeah. He says, that's how you first made it into my classroom at lunchtime detention. And he said, after that, you came to detention of your own free will to read more and read more and read more. And he goes on to say, when you first came to detention, I just randomly gave you that book. I randomly pulled it off a shelf, was playing with it in my hand, and threw it on your desk to keep you occupied. Right. He's like, I'm not Hindu. I don't do yoga. I know nothing about yoga. Right. And what he goes on to say was really beautiful. He said, look at his synchronicity. And he's talking about me. He says, you have been talking about how I influenced your life at 14 years old. And you have been speaking about my influence on your life for the last 15 years. He said, but what you don't know is I have been speaking about your influence on my life as a 14-year-old kid and the impact you made on me for the last 25 years. And he said, how I found you is I now teach in Ontario, Canada. And I was telling my class about this little kid, Troy Hadeed, at 14 years old, and his commitment to read books that most adults wouldn't even read. And they Googled your name. And up comes my website as an international yoga teacher. And he couldn't believe it because we had absolutely no correspondence for 25 years. And I was talking about his influence on my life, and he was talking about my influence on his life. And he says, look at that. Look at the synchronicity in that. And so I share that story with you for so many reasons, because it speaks of our impact we have, and unintentionally, we don't even realize the power we have in every choice and every decision. But it was that impact that, may I have found yoga otherwise? Maybe. I didn't start practicing yoga until 25. But
Right.
when I left university at 21, if you had asked me what I was going to do, I would tell you I'm going to teach yoga. And people would ask, well, do you practice yoga? I was like, nope.
And how
So,
are you going to teach it, right?
yeah, so something about that interaction left a mark on me, you know?
You know, that I absolutely love that story, right? Because one, you gave me goosebumps, right? When you're thinking about the influence that teacher put on you, when in reality, you were put in his life for that reason, right? And little did he know that this 14-year-old kid was going to be just like, keep giving me books. I love these books you're giving me, right? Like, and if there's anybody listening, parents or anybody, they're probably going, I wish my 14-year-old was like that, right? With electronics nowadays, it's like, but we all have stories like that, right? Where, like, for me, I'll give you a quick story. Like my senior year in high school, like I wasn't the best student at all, right? Like I just wanted to graduate and party, the usual.
Yeah.
And I had to really do well in my English class. Like I had to graduate I had to get a B plus or better on the final, complete all my assignments for that last semester in order to graduate. And to this day, I wish I could have gone back. I think she's passed away since, because it's been a long time, but the influence that teacher had on my life, almost like yours, right? Because even though I thought she was like, God, she's being mean, man. She's pushing me so hard. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like leave me alone. Right. And even when I took a test, she sat me like right in front of her. So like we were this, and she's watching me, and I get that B plus or better. And she shakes her head, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I failed. I'm not going to graduate. She gets up and she shows me the test. I got a B plus, and she gave me a hug, and she goes, Max, I knew you could do it. Like I get emotional thinking about that. Teacher had more faith in me than I had in myself, but she knew I could do it. You know what I mean? And I would always take that example like into my college days, right? When I went to university and go, okay, if this teacher thinks I'm that good, right? Like I got to give the effort. And I graduated later, of course, at 49 years old, but at least I went to college and graduated. But when I hear your story, it brings out emotions because you never know who's watching and who has that faith in you, right? And you just have to, like that you said, that synchronicity, it's going to happen right when it needs to happen. Yeah. And it changes your life forever. And like that, it didn't do it right then, right? Because I still went on my way and did my thing. But as I grew up and got sober and learned and remembered those moments, I go, this is what life's about. She was trying to help me. Right. Yeah. Now that's what I do. I try to help people when they're at their lowest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You never know, sometimes the things we do that seem completely insignificant and mindless could change someone's life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So dive in a little bit more about your book and what it's about and how it can help people.
Yeah, well, it's called My Name is Love, and pretty much, at 21, I knew I was going to write a book. But I tried a few times prior to this, but it just didn't come through. And I think when I started writing it this time, I was just ready, and it was ready to be born. And the reason I wrote this book pretty much was because, Max, we it's almost like in the world of spirituality or self-help or self-development or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Like, we know how to be better. We repost things, we read the right books, we share quotes, we talk about the right things. But it seems that we're somewhat disconnected. There's a disconnect between what we want to do or what we know we should be doing and how we actually live our lives and what we embody.
Right.
There's a bit of a disconnect there. And I think that is because we're not asking question, how does this apply to me?
Right.
We're reading these things, we're learning these things, and we're saying, "Oh yeah, great, epic," and we're saying, "Look at me, look at where I embody this, look at where I live from a place of love."
Right.
But we're not creating space to look at where we're not. We're not creating space to look at our own shadow, our own darkness, because we're so caught up in saying, look at where I live from a place of love. Look how great I am. And we are great, and we need to keep doing that.
Right.
But that's not where our growth lives.
Right.
Our growth lives when we start to ask the questions, where am I not doing that? Where am I so stuck in self-preservation, self-desire, wants, needs, my own satisfaction of life, that I am having a negative impact on the people in the world around me?
Right.
And I think that is a question we need to ask, and that those are things we need to start to look at and really ask the question, where can I be a better human being? What am I missing? And I think this book is an attempt to share some teachings and philosophies and experiences. It's a lot of storytelling, part memoir as well. But I also demonstrate how I reflect on my own experiences
Right.
and how I draw lessons from them. And then I ask the reader to really see how it applies to their life, you know? What
Awesome.
does it mean to you?
Right. Because, well, as some of the greats, right, in the past or even the recent past, a lot of them say, get comfortable being uncomfortable, which
Yeah,
means taking a look at those things about yourself that need work, right? Right.
yeah,
Because you're right. We live in a society where everybody wants to go, look at me, look what great things I'm doing.
yeah,
Right. But they don't want to talk about like that path that it took to get there.
yeah,
Right. And that's why I'm so adamant about my recovery. Right. And I told you before, right, that my foundation is because part of that process was taking a look at all those deep, dark crevices where I wanted to numb myself from.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And not look at
yeah.
because I was so ashamed, right? But right, like now it's part of who I am, right? Do I have to live that way anymore? No, but those experiences can help me help someone else by sharing that stories with them, right? So they
Yeah,
know they're not alone and that okay, you're in a dark spot, but how are we going to get out of it now, right? Like,
yeah,
right? Because I think it's important that you said it's about learning those lessons that are trying to be taught to us so that we can become better people and then in turn help other people, right? Because
yeah. And then correct me if I'm wrong, Max, but I'm pretty sure. You see, once you start doing that, you don't ever stop.
no,
The journey to embody this greatness, it never stops. We never have it figured out at all. And I love to remind people again, not that I'm bringing back up religion, but a lot of the establishment, nobody talks about this. But Christ said, it's in the Bible. Christ said, you will do far greater things than I have ever done.
right.
Let us sit in for a moment, dude. That comes with massive responsibility. And we have to live up to that. We have to at least try to.
At least try, right? And
Yeah.
if you're really faithful, right, knowing that you may not figure it out right away or attain that right away, right? The love from
Yeah.
the universe, God, or whatever tells you though, keep going. You'll
Yeah.
get there, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like my recovery is not a once and done, right? I have
Yeah.
I have to keep evolving or I fall back into old behaviors and then people go, hey, what happened to you? you're like the old Max, right? Without drugs. And I'm
Yeah.
like, do I want to be that guy? Absolutely not. Right. I want to be able to have these conversations like with Troy here and help other people realize, right? It's a journey. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Don't be afraid. Yes, you're going to make mistakes, right? And I always bring this up, Troy, and tell me if I'm wrong, right? But it's like the Rocky, right? At Rocky 5, where he's talking to his son, he goes, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how many times you get knocked down, but you get back up and you keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Not how hard you get hit, right? Because I love what he says, because that's how winning is done, right? But he doesn't ever say like, oh, you're done, right? You're going to keep getting knocked down.
You know what? Yesterday I came across a quote, or day before I came across a quote I've never heard before. Like, wow, that is good. It says, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Yes.
Because if you stop, you don't want to stop in hell. So you gotta keep going. You gotta keep going. And you'll come out on the other end. You'll always come out on the other end. Maybe it's in a different lifetime and whatever after, but you'll come out on the other end.
Right.
You know?
Something good is at the end of the tunnel, at the light.
Yeah.
It'll get brighter, right? But I always like to say, yes, I get to the end, right? The light's bright, but then there's always another path to go and more lessons to learn, right? Because I mean, if we learned everything in this lifetime, it'd kind of be boring, right? Because then we'd be like, what else am I going to do, right? Like,
it would make no sense why we are in our bodies, if not.
Right? Like for me, right? I was telling Troy, right? Like I get frustrated trying to do yoga because I couldn't do certain poses or this or hold this or do that. And he goes, Max, it's not about the poses. It's about what's going on inside of you during that and what you learn from that. So like now I've got interest in yoga again because I always have. Now I have to remind myself that it's like, I don't have to be perfect at it. I have to just do it. Just like everyday life, right? I don't have to be perfect at life. I just
got to show up.
Right. And there's one thing I learned is always just be 1% better than you were the day before, right? If you do that every day, like you can look back on a year and go, wow, I'm 365% better than I was last year, right?
Yeah.
Talk about.
And on top of that, it's okay if we're not.
Exactly.
Some days we're not going to be 1% better. The world's going to be on our shoulders and we just won't be able to. And it's okay not to be okay some days, you know?
I was just going to say that, right? Because life is not perfect. So it is okay to be not okay. But like, you know, sometimes, as you know, it's hard for us to sit in that uncomfortability and go, oh, well, Troy said this is okay, but I don't like it. Well, that's okay. You don't have to like it, but just try it. Right? I mean, look at my journey. I just have to say, like, I've been having these wonderful conversations with people like yourself, Troy. And right at the end of this, right, it always inspires me to keep going and to keep learning, right? Even at 57. And because here's the legacy that I want to leave, right? Is that dad, grandpa, great grandpa, great great grandpa did what he said he was going to do when he said he was going to do it. And he was always, you know, straight up with us, right? And if you heard nothing about money, right, that would be great. But I want my kids, grandkids, great grandkids, and so on and so forth, to be able to look back and say, Grandpa was a good guy, right? He really tried to be better every day, and he helped people along the way, right?
Yeah, that's it.
You know what I mean? And that's why I brought Troy on today, right? When I was doing my research, I go, this is going to be good. But see, here's where the nervousness or that imposter syndrome comes in. I'm like, oh, yeah, what am I going to talk about with Troy, right? Because he's he's way where I want to be, right? But then, you know, like you said, I just tell myself, like, look, man, just having a conversation and see where it goes, right? Like, he's here to bring value to your audience, and you're here to just guide it and let it happen. And that's all I have to do sometimes, right? Because this has been quite an amazing conversation.
Yeah. And you know what, Max, I mentioned to you before, but I think you're selling yourself short too, because
I do all the time, and I gotta stop doing that.
Yeah, because like I told you, and I didn't mention it for the audience, but I've pretty much been sober my entire life.
Right.
I don't know what it's like to be drunk. I've smoked herb a few times. I could probably count that on two hands as a ritual and a ceremony. But I'm a sober individual. And it takes a whole different level of courage and warrior and grit to be able, for lack of better words, to go over to the dark side and then come back.
Right.
You know, and that's, you have so much to teach me and to teach all of us in that regard, you know. So I want to honor you there as well.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you, my
Yeah.
friend. Right. Like I said, this has been an amazing conversation so far. But so your book, what else besides I Am Love, right?
My name is Love.
My name is Love. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah. What else can the audience expect from your book when they read it, besides like the obvious that we've been talking about already? So
yeah,
talk about some of the things you haven't mentioned yet.
All right. I'm gonna make, first of all, a big bold claim, and I'm gonna guarantee that anyone that reads this book will be left different and left better. That this book is gonna make your life, make you a better human being, and make your life better. And I think simply, and it's the kind of book that you could read over and over at any point in time. Read it today, read it next year, read it year after that. And every time there's something different that's going to hit you and it's going to land. And, you know, there's some really exciting, cool stories. People love his stories. But we all have stories. And it's more about, what do we extract from our experiences? What do we extract from our stories? And are we willing to ask that question, how does it apply to my life? Because if your initial reaction is that it doesn't, you're lying to yourself.
Right.
You're lying to yourself. It does. It does. And you know, along your journey, Max, it's like I was telling somebody today, it was 4 years plus in your writing. And and I've worked with several amazing editors. And I've now reached a point where I could hold that book up to the world and say, this book will change your life. Whereas along your journey, I had days where it was like, oh, it's mediocre, it's average, it's shit. But then now I can safely hold it up and be like, yo, you should read this book. And there's also an audiobook that I narrate myself. So if you like a Caribbean accent, that might be your jam, you know.
I love it. Oh, I'll probably do both.
Yeah. And you know what? You know what I'll do, Max? We haven't discussed this before, but I will give you a link where you can give away 30 copies of the audiobook, and you could put it in the show notes. And the first 30 people that click that link will get a copy of that audiobook. How's that sound?
Wow, you heard that, everybody. Like, there, he's giving you no option but to say yes.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't even know what to say, but thank you so much. That would be
Yeah.
awesome. So now I'm going to get into the questions like we were joking before, but these are the ones I do remember. So we're going to start with fearless, Troy. Like, what does fearless mean to you today, and how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
Fearless. Well, we can't, in my opinion, we cannot ever glimpse or embody love as long as fear is present. And even fear is driven by love, right? Because any element of fear is based on my self-preservation, my well-being, or maybe or the preservation of the people in my life, my inner circles, my family. But all those are extension of my identity.
Right.
Right? So at the very root of fear is love. It's just self-love. And in order for us to really glimpse what love is, we have to be able to identify our fears, cultivate a relationship with our fears, because fear is also good. Fear is good. Fear protects us. Fear keeps us present. But when I think of what it means to be fearless, what comes to mind is identifying where fear comes up in my life and where fear is controlling me. and cultivating a relationship to that fear, and then deciding, does that fear serve me, or is that fear inhibiting my ability to love? Because my commitment is to love. And if we're committed to love, then we have to cultivate a relationship to our fears and not avoid them.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Wow. You heard that, everybody. I hope you're paying attention. That leads me into the next question, right? Happiness. And as you see, I put a Y in happiness. I did that.
Yeah.
But knowing I put that Y in happiness, what does happiness mean to you, Troy? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
Man, Max, I'm going to be really honest with you. I've been pondering that question a lot. You know, I'm not going to sit down here and pretend to be a guy who has it figured out.
Right.
And whose life is all flowers and rainbows and beautiful, lived in the Caribbean, teaching yoga, on podcast, writing books. There are elements of my life that it's really uncomfortable, and I would love for them to be different. And at 45 years old, I've been asking myself a lot, what does happiness mean to me? Am I happy? Am I really happy? And I've been asking that question, what does happiness mean? I would like to say in a lot of ways I am happy, but can happiness and struggle coexist? Can happiness and loneliness coexist? I would like to believe yes. And if that was so, I would have to say, yeah, I'm happy most of the time. I'm happy. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm happy. I'm making the world a better place. I'm doing what I love. But if I had to answer your question, I'm not too sure yet. I think happiness is. I'm gonna try to answer it, even though I'm not 100% sure. I think happiness is doing your best, and being okay with the things you want to be different.
I love it. I think that's as honest as you can get.
Yeah.
Right. I love it. Wow. That was deep, right? Because
Yeah.
you couldn't say it any better. Man.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an amazing, amazing time, Troy. But I'm at the point where I want to ask you, if my audience wants to get your book, they want to reach out to you, ask questions, learn yoga from you, whatever.
Yeah.
How do they get a hold of you?
All right. Well, they could find me at troyhadeed.com, TroyHadeed. And I'm on Instagram, TikTok. I'm most active on Instagram. At least I respond most on Instagram. If they want to get my book, it's available on Amazon as well as Audible. They could get it through my website. And if they want to practice yoga with me, well, they have a few options. They could come to Trinidad. Or they could join me on retreat. That's also on my website. I have 2 retreats, one in Mexico at the end of October, one in Panama at the end of May. Or they could practice with me online. And that's also on my website, beyondyogatv.com. The first 30 days are free. And of course, I also work one-on-one. If that was a desire, they could schedule a free 15-minute intro call and we could see how I could help, you know?
I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, Troy, this is, like I said, been beyond awesome. I've learned so much from you. You brought so much value to the podcast and to the audience. I mean, I know we could keep this going for probably a couple of hours if we wanted to, but you're not quite off the hook just yet.
Yeah.
My favorite question I love to ask of all my guests goes like this. So, Troy, what is the one piece of advice you could give my audience to help them grow as human beings and become better people?
Wow. I think that's easy. That's easy. I would invite listeners, and I'm going to choose my words carefully. I don't care what you want to call it. You call it God, you call it spirit, call it, I mean, you can't call it a universe because something created the universe. So call it energy, call it Gaia, call it Jim, John, Max, whatever, right? That spirit, that entity doesn't have an ego, doesn't care what you call it or what you say it looks like or whether it's formless or nameless. But I would say this, whatever you need to do to cultivate a relationship to God, even if you have to make it your own, do it. Because that's the one thing that makes us all the same. It's the one thing that connects all of us. And if we don't connect to some understanding of divinity, then we'll always be separate and we'll always be different. And there'll always be Troy in his body and Max in his body and listeners in their body. And we'll always be separate and different. And the one thing that makes us the same is that entity, that intelligence that predates anything we could ever possibly put a label on. Connect to that. That would be my advice, because once you do that, and everything else is going to find its way.
I love it. I love it. You heard that, everybody. I hope you're paying attention. Well, Troy, thank you so much for being here. It's like I said, this has been an amazing time. I'd love to bring you back one day.
Anytime. How's tomorrow?
We could do that tomorrow. Well, I got to see who's on the podcast for tomorrow.
Yeah. Anytime, buddy. I'm all yours.
I love it. I have so much fun. I've learned so much. Thank you for being here. So you heard him, everybody. If Troy made you think, if he taught you something, if Troy made you smile, and my famous, if Troy made you go, I like that, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. And again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnijst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.